channel. I'm Keira and I have a very special guest with me today. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm James Seager and I run Les Enfants Terribles theatre company.
So for those of you that don't know, Les Enfants Terribles is a theatre company that specialise in immersive theatre. They're an incredible theatre company. I've mentioned them in previous videos, so you know I'm a huge fan. So today we get the chance to pick James's brains a little bit about how the theatre company came to being and how it all works. So let's start from the beginning and how it all started.
How it all started.
Yes.
So I co-run the company
Yes.
with a guy called Ollie, and in the early days we both started out as actors. He still acts, and well, I don't anymore. Similar, maybe, to yourself.
Same thing.
So we're both actors, and basically the company came out of a desire to just want to put shows on. It was more of a case of, look, we're both actors, and we've really desired to tell stories, and so let's just get a group of friends together and just put on our show. Let's, instead of waiting for people to employ us, let's just employ ourselves as actors. So he had this idea, Ollie, of let's go to the Edinburgh Festival. I'd been once before, and I knew what it was, what the festival, you know, what the opportunities it offers you, how big it is, and everything that it entails.
Actually, just in case anyone doesn't know what Edinburgh Fringe Festival is, it's a festival that is on for a month in Edinburgh every year. And I think it started off comedy, did it? I mean, that's kind of a word that's associated with it a lot.
Yeah.
But there's all different genres of theatre there, and it's an incredible way for theatre companies to be seen, comedians to be seen, and to meet lots of other people.
Yeah, it's a great marketplace, and our story of how the company grew is an Edinburgh story, really. Yeah. We are where we are because of Edinburgh. There's nowhere. It's the biggest festival in the world. That's where it's, when people don't know about Edinburgh or heard about Edinburgh, you know, people may have heard about Glastonbury or whatever, but the largest and the biggest festival in the world is the Edinburgh Festival.
Wow, I've never thought. I don't know if I knew that.
No, and I don't think many people do. But like you said as well, you know, it's not just comedy. It's theatre. It's circus. Over the last 5 years, circus is
really
huge over there. There's music. There's TV. There's film.
Musicals,
it's huge. It's a huge festival, and it's on for a month. So that's how we started, and it was only a desire of like wanting to put shows on. So we took a show up to the Edinburgh Fringe, calling in loads of favours to do this show. There was me and Ollie in the first show. It was a ridiculous amount of people. There's 20 people in this show, which is stupid for a first ever show. But it went well. A lot to organise. And you know, off the back of that, we thought, well, let's do it again. So the following year, it was a lot smaller this time, the cast size. Ollie and I and a few others, and for about 5 years, that's how the company did stuff. We premiered a show in Edinburgh every year, and sometimes we would, in those early days, we'd both be in them as actors. And then it started being he would direct it, and I would be in it, or I would direct it and he would be in it. But after the first year, he would always write all the shows. So Ollie's a writer.
Oh wow, so they were all new shows?
Yeah, the first one wasn't, but every show since were all new shows.
Wow.
And again, that was only born out of thinking, let's do a show and we don't have to pay anyone for the rights to do the show.
So that's quite clever if you're putting on a show and you don't have much money.
Yeah.
It's just to create your own show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we did all these jobs out of the necessity. Ollie wrote them, I directed them, he directed them with me, we both acted in them. And then we did a show in 2005 called Immaculate, and then we were approached, I mean, this is what Edinburgh's like, as in it's a marketplace. We were approached by a few venues in the UK and a venue in Dubai, and they said, look, can you bring the show out? And we were like, yeah, that sounds really cool. So it was the first time, you know, after 4 or 5 years at the Fringe, where our company and our shows lived outside of the Fringe. It was only a relatively small tour, but to organise that tour, to you know, finance it, to get it all going, blah blah blah, that's producing. And so without even realising it, you know, we were producers in doing this very, very small tour.
And had that always been something you'd been hoping would happen after a show, or it was just
in a way, yes, but only because we wanted people to see our shows, not a desire because we wanted to be producers. More that we wanted to put on our theatre shows as creators, as directors, writers, or actors in different venues in London or wherever. And then we followed it in 2006 with another show that had maybe 1 or 2 weeks, venues who were interested, But the big change, we were talking about it a little bit before, but the big change was 2007, and we did a show called The Terrible Infants, and that changed everything, really. It changed everything creatively. It was the first time that we tried a lot of new things in our theatre shows, but also it changed things organisationally as well. So creatively, it was the first time we worked with puppets, first time we worked with music, first time we did direct address to the audience, and organisationally, we were inundated by venues and producers and people saying, we want to take the show, and it was a bit overwhelming, but very exciting. What do you think
it was about that show that struck people?
It was a show that a critic described it as it was a show that made adults feel like children again. Oh. Which was probably sums up I think it gives audiences a lot of joy, inner joy. And I think a couple of critics picked up, that was one critic that said that, which I think sums up that show. It's quite dark and macabre and twisted, and it's our influences were Roald Dahl, were Shock-Headed Peter. We were talking about that. We loved Shock-Headed Peter, and that was a huge influence on that show. But it was it's a show about children. It's a series of short stories about children behaving badly and essentially having really grisly and horrible demises and ends. But it's done with a lot of fun, and I think it's very inventive. And I always thought about the show. If you came to see the show and you hated the writing, you can't help but be impressed by the amazing puppets that Sam Wire designed for it. Or if you came and saw it and you hated the puppets, you've got to love the writing of it that Ollie did, the rhyming and the couplets, and it's beautiful. Or if you hated all those things, the music that this guy Tom did is incredible. So I think there's something for everyone in that show, but I think and a lot of critics call it quite Tim Burton-esque as well. Yeah. So I think creatively, people really enjoyed that show, and actually that show ran and toured for 5 years, and we brought it back as well in 2018 to Wilton's Music Hall.
Oh, did you? Okay.
So, and we will bring it back again, because I think, whenever audiences see that show, they absolutely love it. I guess, it's not, I'm the director of the show, it's not to me to say, oh, it's a great show.
It's a style you don't see that often, though, in the theatre.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's storytelling at its root, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, I think, all of our shows are very different, but what links them all is exactly what you said. We're a storytelling theatre company. And, Roald Dahl has lasted for generations, 100 years now. And I think that's what he does so well. Yes. And I think that's why we're influenced by him, and what that particular show tried to do. But then it changed just organisationally, and as a company, we were properly formed in that year. Established ourselves as a company, started to employ one person.
So it's a big change.
It was a big change. And we had to book tours, and it was predominantly me doing that, and ironically as well at the time, Ollie's writing career started to really take off in the TV world. So he also writes quite a lot for TV and for film. So he was doing a lot of that, and then coming back to the theatre company for when this show toured. But then we became producers without realising it, in terms of like booking these tours, organising these tours, trying to finance them.
Really learning on the job.
Absolutely. We didn't have any desire to I want to be a producer. We're theatre makers, and then the company grew basically from that show and my knowledge as being a producer, because it was then we made a decision that I would become a bit more full-time as in the office, as it were, as the producer. But I'd still be creatively involved in when we directed shows and created shows, but it would be me, 2 or 3 days a week, whatever, booking the tours and organising it, and then the two of us would actually go on the tours in the early days.
Was it intimidating, like the first time when your role changed and you were becoming a producer and you were talking to these companies that were approaching you, and it was the first time you'd ever done so? Yeah. Was that quite scary, or were you just so excited that kind of...
It's a good question. I think... I think, it's good. Yes and no, because we were kind of I didn't really notice the change. I know it was a huge change, but it might sound strange because the 6 previous years that we've done in Edinburgh, and anyone who's done Edinburgh knows that's kind of, Edinburgh is all about the hard sell. You know, you're out there meeting the public, trying to get them to come and see the show. You're meeting a reviewer, trying to get them to come to review your show. You're meeting a producer, like who's, you know, does a West End show at a party or something, or drinks, or tours shows around, and you're trying to get them to come and see the show. So it's the hard sell. So that kind of, you know, upbringing, as it were, in Edinburgh up to that point, kind of taught me how to do that. Of course, it was a different step in terms of it was now doing it outside of August. It was doing it, you know, and emailing people, and some people like, oh, who are you? And we're like, oh, we've got this show, you know. So that was a little bit intimidating, and you know, it took me quite a long time to get over the fact of like just getting on the phone or emailing people and say, look, I've got this product, you should take it, because I'm not that kind of a person of like being, do this, do no, take that. And I think many people think that when they start a company or do it, is actually you'll discover, hopefully, that actually people in the industry are actually a lot nicer and more approachable than you think. And they will say, come and interview me, or oh, look at me. But I'll give you some advice, or whatever. And so I think that was a bit of a burden, or a bit of a hurdle to get over. Of course, there are probably not so many nice people out there, but there are a lot of nice people.
I think that's something that can really hold people back.
Yeah, and it did hold me back as well, because being self-taught as a producer, a lot of the time it was like, well, what am I missing out on? What do I not know? And going to a producer and looking like an utter idiot, which I'm sure I did in the early days of like, what do I do here? What do I do there? I was very lucky as well in that at the time, I'd just been cast as an actor in a show, quite a big show, and I got on really well with the producer of this big show. So she became a little bit of a mentor that I could always say, hey, Imogen, what am I doing? Can you help me with this? And she was really, really good in the early days, and she saw how Terrible Infants was growing, and she helped. So I was lucky that I did have one person, but apart from that, we didn't really have anyone, which is like why I'm very keen to help people, and why we do something called the Let Award, which is helping companies get to Edinburgh and helping companies, you know, develop and grow, that is off the back of Edinburgh, but also off the back of not really knowing what to do next or who to approach.
Actually, could you tell them a little bit about what's the word? That you've just stopped the applications for this year's one, haven't you?
Yes.
But if you could just tell them.
Sure. Yeah, so the Let Award was established in 2013, I think. I'm not very good with years.
Time flies.
I know, it's scary. But anyway, the desire, it came off the back of what I was just saying in terms of going to Edinburgh and realising Edinburgh is such a market and companies growing from Edinburgh. So we thought, I think it was Ollie's idea actually, and it was a really good idea, and he said, look, we should help companies like us get to Edinburgh. So we set this thing up called the Les Enfants Terribles Award, Let Award. And basically the premise is, it's the application process. We open it out, and the award is you get a guaranteed slot at the Pleasance Theatre, which is one of the best theatres. One of the
best venues in Edinburgh,
up there. So we partnered with the Pleasance, who've always been a big supporter of us. And we also give them £1,000. It's not a lot of money, but we also mentor them and help them. Not produce, but we're always there to, at the end of the phone and email, and we're a dedicated person in the office to help them. So it is kind of producing. So I think more than the money, the big thing is the slot in Edinburgh. Because £1,000 doesn't go very far in Edinburgh nowadays. Although hoping to raise it. The slot at the Pleasance, the mentoring and the producer help. So we open it out every year to any company. We do say that they should be, new, young companies. We're not going to offer this to established companies. They're usually people who maybe just come out of drama school and they're friends and they've set up a company together, or maybe it's a company going 2 or 3 years. You apply to it, and then we select 10 companies and 10 companies do 10 minutes for one night in February or March time. In London, they'd show 10 minutes of their piece. And at the end of the night, we choose a winner from those 10 shows. It's always a really, really nice evening, actually. We've, like I said, we've done it 6 or 7 years now.
That's quite nice as well for the different companies to have an evening where they can meet each other and make contacts as well. Yeah, and that's why it's a really nice evening. But it's quite hard to choose a winner because you have really varying styles of theatre. Yeah. But what we always look for is obviously we know what works and what doesn't work in Edinburgh, and we'd be wrong to take a show that we don't think would work in Edinburgh, because you'll have it when Edinburgh goes badly, it goes very badly. When it goes well, it goes very well. So some shows would fly. We see some things and think, yeah, this show would be perfect for Edinburgh, and they have that passion, that desire, and willingness to do something. So that's what we look for the winners. But also the 10 companies, I always say to them every night, the 9 that don't win, do stay in touch with me. Yeah. I'll help. I'll always be at the end of the phone, for any advice. That's been going about 7 or 8 years, and we've just closed submissions for this year, and we'll be doing the showcase, as it's called, for the 10 companies. I think it's February this year, end of February, at the Pleasance Theatre in London. Oh, cool! And it's a really good night. So if anyone's watching this, or can anyone go?
Yeah.
Anyone can go.
Anyone can go.
How does anyone get tickets?
It's ticketed on it's only £5, and for a ticket, and it's at the Pleasance in London. So you go onto the Pleasance website.
On the Pleasance website, I'll put a link in the description.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's
great way for people to see new theatre companies as well, and lots of different types of work.
Awesome. And as you said as well, it's quite a good networking night as well. Meeting other companies and meeting what's happened over the last couple of years, which is quite interesting, is other venues have started coming to it as well. So the Underbelly or the Assembly Rooms, these are Edinburgh venues, they've started to come as well. So if a company doesn't win our award, it's really still a good showcase for the Underbelly too. And the Underbelly in the past, or Assembly or Good Balloon, whoever they are, Space, they've taken shows off the back of that as well.
That's really cool.
It's grown out of that, and it's really good. It's a great night, and I think our desire to help a company is because of that's how we started, and no one was offering kind of that when we were doing it, and we had to learn a lot by ourselves, which is what got to that point of doing Terrible Infants back in 2018.
So Terrible Infants, like we were saying, was quite
2008, not 2018.
2008.
Sorry,
not last year,
dates.
2 years ago now. It was a step away as well. It was Latitude, you said, was the first time you'd ventured into immersive work.
Yeah, that's right.
And then after that, did you initially know, right, this is where we kind of want to be now?
Again, it was a little bit. So we did a musical, 2010, called The Vaudevillains, which we've brought back a few times, and it was in Edinburgh again. So a few years we came across this model of premiere show in Edinburgh and then tour it, the following year. New show in Edinburgh, tour it. New show in Edinburgh, tour it. And we were asked to do it at Latitude Festival, which is a brilliant festival. It's not just a music festival, loads of theatre is there as well. So we did the show, and Latitude said, look, at the end of the show, why don't you do a party at the end of it in the woods? The theatre tent backs out to these woods, and it'd be really cool if you open up the doors and invited the audience down, and all the actors and the audience go into the woods and have a big party. And so we did that. It was really cool, and we had like a DJ, and we had people on stilts, and we had the characters, and we had different characters that weren't in the show but connected to the show.
So bringing the world to life, really. Yeah. And
like backstage, kind of like
That's
it, because this musical was all set in a music hall. So it was in this fictional musical called The Empire. And so we had like backstage people who worked at the Empire in the woods. So it was, but no one was using the word immersive back then. But essentially it was an immersive experience, immersive show, party, event, whatever you want to call it. But we didn't know, but there was a manager of a band who came to see the show and came to see this party afterwards. Now there's a band called Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. They're an amazing band, look them up, an American band, who are quite big in America. Oh, they were, but they're really cool. They'd never been to the UK before, and the manager saw this thing and he approached us and Latitude and said, look, I want to launch my band in the UK, but my band are a little bit different. They want to do an experience. They don't want to do a gig, they want to do an experience. Would you do it? And so we were like, yeah, brilliant. And their brief was Wild West on Mars. So we were like, cool. So it was a 5-day gig, and basically it was in the old Vic tunnels, which is near the vaults. It's closed now. So it was it was a collaboration between Latitude, the old Vic tunnels, and us, and we did this experience. Again, no one was using the word immersive, but the audience arrived. Now this whole kind of hour show that then led on to the band doing the gig, Edward Sharpe and Magnetic Zeros, and it was really cool. But that was kind of the start of our foray into immersive experiences and immersive shows. And off the back of that, someone had seen it and was doing an opening a hotel in London, and they said, we're doing an opening of a hotel and I want to do something a little bit different, would you guys come and do it? And we kind of wrote and devised this whole script and narrative and immersive experience for this opening of this hotel, which again, we set it because it was originally the founder started in the 20s, so we set it in the 20s. And we did this whole kind of 20s experience, and the audience, the people who were coming for this opening of this hotel thought they were just coming to a little drinks event. But
they had no idea.
No idea. And suddenly they
amazing.
were thrown into this 1920s world where we had singers and jazz players and flapper girls and a narrative as well. And again, no one was using the word immersive, but it kind of snowballed all from doing these things. At the same time, Ollie and I, were going to quite a few immersive experiences. This is kind of when Punch Drunk first started, and the early days of secret cinema, and enjoying them, but becoming, for us personally, a little bit frustrated with them. And some of their shows are brilliant, some of those shows are not for me, but becoming a little bit frustrated, and frustrated because of what you said earlier, because of a lack of, for us personally, story. So we were going to these shows and thinking, these are great, really love them, but wouldn't it be great for us if there was a storyline in this, if there was storytelling, what we did and are doing on stage, wouldn't it be great if we did this in immersive theatre? And we're like, yeah, that'd be really, really cool. Let's do one. And usually our artistic policies or artistic decisions are usually come out of like, what do we want to do?
Yes. We
saw Shock-Headed Peter and thought, this is a great show, but wouldn't it be great if we did this little bit or this little bit or turn this little bit, and Terrible Influence was born. So with seeing a few immersive shows and going through these kind of experiences with Edward Sharpe and this hotel and the Vaudevillains, it was like, yeah, it'd be great to do a show where people were in the story, they were immersed in the story, not just in the world, but in a story.
Yes, that's a very clear distinction actually. I've done a video on immersive theatre, and immersive, like you said, the word wasn't around so long ago, so it's still so new, so to define it is difficult in some ways because it's still being formed.
It is.
And there's so many different offshoots.
There are, especially now. And you know, Punch Drunk are massive pioneers of this genre. You know, they started it really with Master of the Red Death at the BAC. I don't know what year that was, but that started this immersive boom. And really, you know, Secret Cinema were doing smaller shows, but their smaller ones were great. I remember going to, they did Gangster One, Miller's Crossing. That was really good. A long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very start of the show.
Maybe 2013. I could be wrong about that. But their concept was, you know, they never told anyone what the film was. It was secret. they said it's a gang, come dressed as gangsters 1930s. And the excitement of, in the early days of secret cinema was like, oh, what's the film going to be? What's the film going to be? And when Miller's Crossing came on, everyone was like, what's Miller's Crossing? I mean, I knew the film, but people think we're expecting probably The Godfather or something. But they did that with Shawshank Redemption as well. That was another one that they did in the early days, and I didn't see that, but that one was supposed to be incredible. And they put everyone in buses and dressed everyone as in prisoners, and they got sent to a prison. And I know the director on it, it does sound really, really cool. But and that did have storylines, but for us, it's very hard free roaming when the audience are free roaming to get a storyline, because audiences are going to miss if someone's going over there. So we thought, well, how do you do that? How can you do an immersive show with a storyline and make it contained? So our immersive shows are different to other immersive shows out there. It's, we don't want to copy what Punch Drunk do or Secret Cinema. What they do is fantastic, but what we do is very controlled. So audiences are in a room, and then they go on to another room and another room and another room, so at different times. Now that sounds quite limiting, but hopefully it's not, and I'll explain a little bit later why it's not. We give you do have free will, but it's not free roaming. And the reason why we do that is then you can control the story. You can have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And what we do, you have the audience have a progression, not just through the show or through the experience or through Wonderland with Alice, for example, but through a story. They do have a beginning, a middle, and end.
They have, from my experience when I went to Alice's, I definitely felt like a journey I'd been on as part of the world, rather than just feeling like an observer of the world. And that's the difference.
Well, that is the difference as well. We wanted to make the audience the absolute key. Now, I always say immersive theatre, the two most important things are role and reason, the two R's. You have to give the audience a role, and you have to give them a reason for being there. A successful immersive show answers those two questions. Over the last couple of years, we've been asked to talk at quite a few gaming conferences. Now, I'm not a very big gamer at all, never have been. And I was quite interested and intrigued why me and Ollie were being asked to do this, but then it's obvious. Video gaming is identical to immersive theatre. You've got this crazy, world that you're sent to, fantastical escapist world. And before you go there, you have a tutorial. You learn what to do, what you have to do. You have to collect this, or go and shoot these people, or whatever. You have to collect these things before you're sent off on these things. So that is how our immersive theatre is similar, and I think immersive theatre generally is similar to gaming. Is that you need to have this tutorial, you need to learn your role. Punch Drunk do it very easily with a mask. You're not in it, you're outside of it, but then you're an observer. This is a detachment. You put this mask on and you're an exterior, it gives you that barrier. So they've given you a role. They said, this is your role. You are an observer. Other shows, what we wanted to do with Alice is really define what it means, because we split audiences up. I mean, you've seen it. You go down and you get split between hearts, diamonds, clubs, spades, and then we thought, well, what does it mean to be a heart, a diamond, and give these people a role? You're a heart, that means you're affiliated with the Queen. That means you have this narrative arc, this happens, and there's a story development of Alice, and you're integral to that story. But in order to do that, it has to be contained. So we started developing these ideas, and actually we started with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, because Roald Dahl is a massive influence on us. We were like, let's do an immersive show back in 2013 when we started thinking about it, and we thought, well, what would be really cool? What world would we love to go to? And we thought, well, everyone would want to go to the Chocolate Factory, right? Roald Dahl is a massive influence on us. It was a no-brainer. And so we tried to get that going, but the rights for it are very complicated. So, and at the same time as well, as the rights discussions were talking, Sam Mendes, I think it was Sam Mendes, did his version in the West End.
That was at that time, yeah.
So we thought, Sam knows what he's doing. We don't want to compete with him.
With the retelling of a classic story, there are still rights involved. You don't or what license?
With that,
there
yes.
were? Okay.
But then we thought, okay, we can't do that show. What other shows, or what other properties are interest us? Now, it's actually an interesting point as well, because it was the first time all our shows up to this point were original shows. You know, Ollie had written them all. But the kind of numbers and that we were after, I think you do need something. You either need, and that, you know, we could talk about this for hours maybe, about what sells a show in the West End. You know, is it because it's a title? Is it because it's a famous director? Is it because there's a famous person in it? Same with films as well. You know, people go and see a film because, is it for those similar reasons?
If there's some form of recognition that calls a person in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you know, you do get shows and films obviously that don't follow that mold and are amazingly successful. But you know, we were at a stage of thinking we want to do a property that represents who we are, Les Enfants, and Charlie and Chocolate Factory represents us a little bit. And then we thought, well, actually, Lewis Carroll, you know, his writings and Alice are quite similar to us. They're quite dark and twisted and macabre. They're kind of aimed at children, but also adults read Alice and appreciate Alice, those books. So we thought, yeah, that world is very Les Enfants. And I think, you know, what is Les Enfants? I think, you know, we have a particular style, we have a particular look and feel, and I think that was established with The Terrible Infants. Yeah. This kind of dark, macabre, twisted, yet playful, yet fun, puppets, music, Tim Burton-esque.
Yeah, if you haven't seen any images, and I'll try and get some images and pop them into the video, but the makeup and the hair, everything's larger than life and brings these characters to life. To life,
yeah. So we thought, right, let's do an immersive Alice. But I think it's important as well now, sitting in 2020. Yeah, just talking about good with dates. Yeah, just. Because there's a huge boom of immersive theatre, and I think the important question is to ask, should this show be an immersive show?
That's a good point to make, rather than just thinking it's the new thing and going with that.
Because I think there are lots, you know, in London, I'm going to really guess this figure, but someone told me that there are 40 new immersive shows this year happening in London. Which is great, it's exciting, and we were talking about the boom of this genre and the immersive word, but also sometimes people can just go, oh, let's just do it immersive, it is the buzzword at the moment.
Definitely.
But it's important to think, why should this be immersive? And I think we're probably in a good place because we're not just immersive theatre makers, we are theatre makers. So we do theatre shows on stage, we do outdoor shows, we do immersive shows, but we have to look at it and think, should this show be an immersive show? Yes, it should, or no, it shouldn't.
When you're creating a show, there's so many, as in any theatre show, there's loads of different aspects that come into it to make the show what it is. And when you create a world so rich, like in Alice's Adventures, the costumes, the set, the aesthetic, as well as the narrative, are so important. What's your first point of reference?
I think with that show, you know, we've kind of got a shorthand with our creatives. So, you know, we sat down and started talking about Alice with the same people that had done Terrible Infants. Okay. So the same directors, same designer, same music, and same writer. So we all, you know, the five of us, all have a very similar aesthetic and taste. And Sam Wire, who's the designer on The Terrible Infants and the designer on Alice, and he grew up with Ollie as well. They've known each other since 10. You know, I've known Ollie since he was 17. So there's that kind of shorthand, but also he's got a very similar aesthetic to what we like. So we knew before we even sat down what Sam's Wonderland was going to look like. And Sam knew how it was going to be written as well, because he knows Ollie so well and knows how it's going to be directed and knows how it's going to sound with Tom, who writes all our music. So we all kind of knew aesthetically where we came from. I think all of our shows are different, but generally we have a very similar aesthetic, and I think that was born from Terrible Infants a little bit. I mean, even our shows previously, same writer, same director, but that was a show, as you say, that that had that aesthetic. So we knew, that was the first time we worked with Sam as a designer actually, that show. So we kind of all knew what the show was going to be like. But then I guess development for that show, I think first of all, why should it be immersive? It should be immersive in my mind because when you read that book, you want to go to Wonderland.
Yeah.
Immersive is all about escapism.
Yeah.
It's all about it's all about building essentially fantastical worlds and leaving, inhibitions at the door maybe, and going off and experiencing something that you wouldn't normally experience, going to this world. So Alice, when you read that book, you want to go to Wonderland. So that's why we thought, I don't want to sit and watch Wonderland, I want to go to Wonderland.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch a story about the chocolate factory, really. I mean, what excites all of us is picking an apple off a tree or dipping a finger in the chocolate river.
Yeah.
You want to go to that
Everyone
chocolate
wants to
factory.
go, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's why those properties should be immersive.
Yeah.
But then, so the development process of Alice, we started this in 2013, 2014, and we started thinking, role, who are the audience? And a lot of the aesthetic and a lot of the script came out of this, about asking who the audience are. Now, we came up with, at the time, a very controversial decision, which is an obvious decision, but we suddenly, I can't remember who it was, suddenly thought, well, the audience are Alice. Because when you read the book, Alice is a conduit to Wonderland. She is the normal person in that world. She is the reader. You when you read that book, you're
seeing it through her eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. She experiences all these people from our normal perspective of normality of the world. So if we're taking the audience into Wonderland, then the audience are Alice. So we thought, okay, Alice is just like the narrative instrument to meet all these people. Of course, she's interesting, but what we want to do with the audience is what Alice is doing. So we thought, okay, so if the audience are Alice, where is Alice? We've got to cut Alice. So that was the controversial decision at the time of going, oh my God, we're cutting Alice from Alice in Wonderland. That's a crazy idea, but it was the right idea because you are Alice.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself, when you read that book, you are Alice as a reader. So then we start thinking, okay, if Alice isn't there, where is she? So then, okay, well, if she's not there, where's she gone? What's happened to her? What's happened to Wonderland if she's not there? What's happened to us if she's not there? Then someone said, one of our co-writers who writes a lot with Ollie, were like, guys, do you know 2015 is the anniversary of Alice in Wonderland? It's 150 years. And we're like, we've got to put it on in 2015. It has to come in 2015. So then we thought, okay, so Alice fell down into Wonderland 150 years ago. She's not there now. She's got to have been disappeared for 150 years. What's happened to Wonderland without this massive influence? If this world is suddenly invaded, if you use that word, by someone from the outside world, our world, she would have a big influence, as she does in The Looking Glass when she comes back. So she's missing. So maybe then something has happened to Wonderland. So then we started, that's how the narrative of talking with Sam, with Ollie, the writers, like if we're taking Alice away from it, what's happened to Alice? Where's she gone? What's happened to Wonderland? 150 years. Wonderland has gone decrepit. Wonderland has fallen into disrepair. Wonderland has gone to shit because Alice has disappeared and the Queen has taken over. So that was the starting point of Wonderland without Alice. And that kind of led to the aesthetic of Sam going, okay, let's create a world that with the edges slightly torn with our aesthetic, which is similar anyway to Sam's aesthetic of this kind of macabre and dark and twisted.
Yeah,
and that's
everything's not quite as it should be.
Absolutely. So that's how it all kind of, in synergy, all of us working together creatively, but it kind of came from, really, of like thinking about who the audience are, really, in immersive, which you must do, I think. And it all kind of led from then, and then it kind of developed further in terms of giving audiences roles of, yes, they're Alice, but you know, we need to give them this narrative of like, if we're going to split the audiences up, which is a big thing in our shows, you know, give them a role, give them hearts, diamonds, clubs, spades, and what does it mean to be those particular roles? And let's affiliate the hearts with the Queen, let's affiliate, you know, red route and black route, split them up, red cards, black cards. Black cards are the underground. We came up with this thing called Worm, the Wonderland Underground Resistance Movement, who want to overthrow the Queen because the Queen has put Wonderland to shit. So then we started thinking, okay, well, this really works in immersive theatre of like putting one group against another group.
So as you can see, we've moved location and sides. So we got moved on from the room, but we're going to carry on now.
Yes.
So we're on Alice's adventures.
So I guess I was explaining, you know, why a show should be immersive and why it shouldn't, and how the show evolved in terms of all of us working together, the creatives, and this is the writer, the director, and us, and the designer, and the musician, the composer. So we were all thinking about, you know, Alice, where is she? Obviously she's disappeared, and that's how the genesis of that show started. But also it's important to think about, you know, I always think about the audience, and you know, we were saying before about a role and reason, giving them a role. What does it mean to be this or that, a club spade? And at the same time as thinking about that, because also we have to think about, you know, with our producer hat on, Ollie and I, in terms of audience numbers, and you have to think, you know, if we are doing a big show, which Alice was, and Alice was our first immersive show. Obviously we've did a lot of experiences and events up to that point, which we talked about earlier. We had to think about how many people we need to get in, and another thing that was frustrating us when we were going to a few other shows was there were too many people in there. So we came up with this idea of like, we want to do a show, like I said earlier, that had narrative, but we also want to do a show with small numbers. Now financially it doesn't really work out, so we had this idea of, okay, well, what if we had multiple entries? So 56 people. Why 56? Because there's 52 cards in a deck plus 4 jokers. It's 56. 56 people go into Wonderland.
So all these little details that you're unaware of. Okay.
Absolutely. 56 people go into Wonderland, and then they get a choice, eat me, drink me. So they get split into 2 groups of 28. Red group and black group. Then they get split again into half, so that's 4 groups of 14. Why 4 groups? As I said earlier, clubs, spades, hearts, diamonds. So then you have an experience with 14 people. They all go around, these 14 people, they all come back together for the tea party and then the court. And that show is an hour and a half, 90 minutes. But that happens every 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, another 56 people come in.
Every 15 minutes, wow.
So another 56 people come into Wonderland, and then another 56, and then they get split, and then they get split. So then you do have, over a course of an evening, you know, roughly 700 people, which is financially what you need when you're creating a show that's over 33,000 square feet. The amount of people that needs to come in financially to make it viable to have 40 actors, which is how many were in Alice, and to build all the sets, which is very expensive. So that's a kind of a good example of the narrative also working with the kind of eye on producer and financial side of it working coherently together, and also coming up with an answer that's a creative answer, that's not just let's get as many people as possible, because that's not why we wanted to do it. We wanted to make it intimate. We wanted to make, and there's no show, to my knowledge, and it sounds quite verbose, but in the world that has that amount of people, like 14 around an immersive show for that long with that much level of detail, and that we can do that because of the model that Alice went through.
And so with that, how difficult is it to make sure that everything is running on time? Or what do you do if there is a scene that has overrun another and there's a bit of a waiting period? So we've
developed this thing since Alice, which is hugely complicated. It'll blow your mind, and it will you know, interest mathematicians hugely out there. It really will. But basically, all of our scenes, they have to be controlled by to the second.
To the second.
To the second.
Wow.
So an audience comes in at minutes, and it's all controlled like this. There's a time code, it's called, and a plan. Audiences come in, they do a scene with an actor, and that scene has to be 4 minutes and 32 seconds. And then at that time, they have to leave. If they don't leave, then you know there's another audience coming in, because
oh my gosh,
not just the obviously 12, 56 audiences, but then they split up obviously into 4 groups. So you've got all these groups, and we didn't want other groups to see other groups. So we had to work out where the audience were at specific times. So then, but also you need actors to know that the audience have to leave a room at a certain time. So there are hidden clues and hidden either light changes or sounds that actor knows, scene's over now, move them on. And that's all done on a computer, a time code.
So is that all like rigged beforehand?
Yeah. So the show Alice will work whether there's an audience in there or actors in there or not. As in terms of all runs on a big computer that is very, very complicated and very, very confusing.
In that way, it's similar to gaming again.
Yeah.
Having this preset machine model.
Yes. Yeah. Now what we complicated it even further by having actors appear in different, like we think it's just a bit boring if an actor stays in a room. You want to see that actor again. Like there's a scene in the court, I mean you've seen the show, where actors reappear that you've seen before, and that is really complicated because actors then are doing different scenes to different audiences at different times in different orders. So the actors are sometimes doing a scene to audience 3, and then they run and do a scene to audience 5, come back and do another scene to audience 3, run over and do a scene or a bit of a scene to audience 7, and that's happening with 40 actors.
How do they get around the set?
They run around the set, they run around the space, yeah.
Because I never noticed that.
No, that's the good thing. You don't want the audience to notice. There was one time, I mean, you've got 40 actors and then 4 lots of audience. You've got 800 audiences. So we did really well of not doing that. But there was one time where this actor was going to have to run through an area where there was an audience already. And we thought, well, let's just make it part of the scene.
Yeah.
Just made it part of the scene.
Yeah.
So this actor, and it fitted because it was the rabbit. So, and I, you know, as long as the rabbit ran through, I'm late, or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
So narratively it worked with that.
Yeah.
But this was an example of coming up with a model that worked because creatively we needed it to work, and also, you know, creatively in terms of we wanted smaller numbers, but also we wanted it to work financially as well. So it is very, very complicated, and to our knowledge, no one has done that. No one had done that before.
Yeah.
And we only did it not because, oh, look at us, we're doing something, but because we were presented with a problem that we had to solve. Our creative ambition was we want a big immersive show where we want with the audience to have a beginning, a middle, and end in an intimate setting.
4 different storylines as well.
Yeah.
And how many rooms were there in Alice?
So there's 26 different rooms. And also we when we first opened it in 2015, the first week, the 4 groups all saw the same thing, and then we thought, no, let's change this. And so all the groups,
just in the first week?
Yeah, we changed it all, which was like pretty crazy, but the right decision to do, because 2 reasons. It made everyone at the end of the show, you know, really excitable about, oh, did you see this? No, but did you see this? Also, it made the world feel bigger.
Yes.
Because there were, you know, more to see. It made it much more...
Different points of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's amazing. So you have a new show coming up.
Yes.
So actually, just before we get onto that, I just want to ask a little bit about the acting process.
Yeah.
So when I went to see you speak before, you mentioned a little bit about the audition process and how many people come to audition for it. But what specifically is it that you look for, or how does the audition process work in general for your work?
Yeah. It kind of varies a little bit when we're auditioning for immersive shows to non-immersive shows. But all our immersive shows are scripted. There's another difference with our immersive shows to some others maybe. You know, there's people assume there's quite a bit of improvisation maybe with immersive shows. Yeah. With ours, they're not.
Because they're so tightly timed.
Yes. Yeah.
How does an immersive show script look? What does it look like?
Do you remember those books? Well, I don't know if you do remember those books, but those books where if you want to go
I knew you were going to say that, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's like
if you want to go down to the woods, turn to page 20.
Yeah.
If you want, that's how it looks. Also,
secret adventure books.
Something like that, yeah. that's how the scripts look. But also, I think the script for Alice is 250 pages long.
Wow.
It's huge.
That's for an hour and a half show, so that shows how complicated it is.
That's right. But when we're casting, you know, I think I look probably for the same, you know, we look for potential. But I think we look for, I mean, you know, the usual things: enthusiasm, potential, an understanding of the script and story is important. Making a decision as well is important when you're auditioning. Making a decision of character, even if it's the wrong decision, make a decision. Even if it's the wrong direction, at least as a director, I'm sitting there going, okay, they've made a choice. And that's important. When I'm auditioning 2,000 people, at least this person's going to stand out because they've made a direct, you know, decision about what this character should be. The other thing, difference with immersive theatre, you have to think about, it's a very different style of acting, and I've worked with some actors who will be brilliant on the stage but not so good in an immersive environment. It's obviously 360 if the audience are around you. Plus also you do have to have that thing of, what if something goes wrong? What if that sound that you're supposed to hear doesn't fire? You got to deal with that. And on press night in Alice, it all went wrong. Which was one of the worst nights of my life. There was a power cut in Waterloo.
Wait, no, that's the one I went to. That's the show
Really?
I went to.
2015?
Yeah, I went to the first one of it.
Wow.
But this is, there was a power cut.
Yeah.
And my husband and I were in different groups.
Okay.
And well, anyway, so we were talking about the show afterwards. When you're similar to the Latitude, you're let out into the party afterwards. And I think I was talking about, the scene in the dark. And he was like, there was a power cut, Keira. And I had no idea. The actor who was in the room with me did such an incredible job. I had no clue.
Well, there you go. That's I mean, well done on that actor. And some actors on that night, well, everyone did really, really well, but like, awful. I mean, awful experience for me personally backstage. Go, what's going on? But that's an example of, like, you know, if something goes wrong, you like there was an actor who had to improvise, I think, for 15 minutes to Lynn Gardner, who's a very big theatre critic, and was like, poor guy. He did really well, but you have to look for that as well in immersive theatre, like whether they can hold a room. Now, it may be seen obvious, but also if something goes wrong, but also the improvisation of, like, if our scenes are 3 minutes and 52 seconds, if an actor does his scene in 3 minutes, like he whittles through it, or for whatever reason, the audience cannot leave before that buzz. So then you've got 52 seconds to fill. So that's when the improvisation comes into it.
Even though it is scripted, the actors need to be able to improvise. Need to be able to act in the moment.
In case but it's funny when you see a play, you know, all the actors out there, they'll know you get into a rhythm. You know, all shows, can you look at show plans, they all last the same amount of time. Tonight's show was 1 hour 32 minutes. The next 1 hour 33, 1 hour 32. Why is that? Because you get into a rhythm of delivering. So after a while, the actors got into a rhythm of their scene, and then they wouldn't even need that buzz after the show ran for 7 months. But after about a month, you do get into a rhythm. And the important thing is, as an actor, you don't get into a rhythm and just sit back. You know, you have to, obviously, as an actor, make it feel fresh, and you have to make it sound fresh, and obviously to every new audience, but you do get into a rhythm, and if after that amount of time something's gone wrong, you need to have that flexibility. So you look for that as well in our shows anyway, which are quite complicated. But I mean, with Alice, there were a few actors that just, and I'm not mathematically minded at all, but there were a few actors that just couldn't get their head around the maths, but that's fine. You just obviously have to talk them through it and say time code, which is what it's called, is like God. Trust time code. Give yourself
Otherwise,
over.
the whole thing unravels. So it's a whole new skill set, really, on top of traditional acting.
Yes,
it is, like you say, you're playing out to the audience who aren't just observers, but are actually in this world, and the actors can see them. So it differs in that way, and also just being able to deal with everything in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, can you tell us anything about the new show?
The new show. So the new show is called United Queendom.
Yes.
And it's really exciting because this show is set in Kensington Palace. It's exciting for many reasons, but doing a show about two historical figures, which is what it's about Queen Caroline, who was married to George II, and George II's mistress, Henrietta Howard. It's about these two women. And we're doing a show about these two women where they lived, where these things actually happened. We're in a room recreating a scene where this actually happened. So that's exciting. It's
Where is it set? Where is the actual show?
In Kensington
Palace.
Palace.
Oh, it is in Kensington Palace. Yeah. Wow, okay.
Which is really cool. That's really exciting. It's also really exciting because who's Queen Caroline and Henrietta Howard? No idea. When the Palace approached us and said, we want to do an immersive show, and it goes to what we were talking about a little bit earlier about the growth of immersive and who are doing it. There's lots of companies, there's lots of organisations that are thinking, yeah, people want to watch immersive theatre, and it's interesting to ask why, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but it's really exciting that the Palace go, we want to do a theatre show. When in the evening, when the Palace is normally shut down, when William and Kate are asleep, because they live they live there as well, like in behind, like one of the buildings behind. But let's do a show.
That's the most immersive you can get.
Yeah, well, we don't see them. Don't worry. Don't walk past them. I don't think they're like that. But it's exciting because it's using this building in a different way. It's exciting because we're doing a show, about in an environment and about two people that no one has really heard about. So that's the other exciting thing is when they approached us, I did history for an A level, but I never heard of these two women. You start researching it and you realise how incredible these two women were. They were feminists before it was even a word. They were outsiders. They essentially ran the court. George II kind of let them run the court. They were in charge. They did so much. Caroline was friends with Isaac Newton, was pushing him, saying this guy's got to come in, you should listen to him. She was friends with Pope and Swift, and was pushing Gulliver's Travels and pushing them. She set up these things called salons, which were basically, she felt that women at the time should be as educated as men and learn as much with history and art and sociology and maths and physics and whatever, and everything, just as much as men. So she set up these forums where people would come in, and it was for women only, and so they're educating women, which were hugely successful. She inoculated her children. She was the first person in the UK to do that.
Wow.
She was saying, this is what you should do. And also it was a very, very complex relationship, because having a mistress, it was a thing to do. George II had to have a mistress.
Had to?
Yeah, it was, a strange thing. But these two women, obviously, it was appointed, so it wasn't like it was private.
So it's a different sense of the way we might understand the word today.
Yeah.
So this is someone who had a role in power.
Yeah, it did. So these two women had an extremely complicated relationship, but they were, Henrietta Howard was an incredible woman who was born into riches in Norfolk, Blickling House, but then she married this awful person who was this guy who was an abuser, an alcoholic, lost all their money, and she was like, right, I'm going to get that back, and she was determined to, and she went to court, and she built a role for herself within court. She built herself up, got rid of this horrible husband, remarried, and then, I won't spoil it, but she got to a really high position in power, and she had a very interesting relationship with Caroline, because the two of them kind of ran things, but then Caroline sometimes, she thought Henrietta was getting the upper hand, because they both, for want of a better word, all shared the same man as well. It's weird in our 21st century sensibilities, but also probably strange obviously back then. But it's a very complex, interesting relationship. But add to that as well that these two women were so forward thinking, so ahead of their time, and were feminists before it was even a word, and it's exciting to reintroduce these two characters to everyone, and I think there's a real movement at the moment in the last year of rediscovering stories, rediscovering history from a female perspective. You look at shows even like Six, which is about the Henry VIII's 6 wives, or Amelia, which is in the West End, another great feminist show, or even there's a book called Five, which is about Jack the Ripper, about Jack the Ripper's victims. So, I mean, even me saying that, it's kind of rediscovering who these women were. These 5 women, you know, who they were. History
knowing
is just,
their names.
Yeah, history is just kind of consign them as 5 prostitutes when actually they're incredible. And this book came out about 6-7 months ago. I've not read it. My girlfriend has, and she told me loads about it, and I started reading it last week. But yeah, there's a real movement to that, and I think that's really exciting, of rediscovering things from a female's perspective. So that was really exciting for us to do this, and I think the first thing that Ollie and I wanted to do was like, well, actually, as 2 men, we really shouldn't be the ones telling this story. So we're not directing it, we're not writing it. Obviously, it's our company, but you know, Krista Harris is the director. She's an incredible director, and Yasmin is a writer with a guy called Anthony. So there's 2 of them. We wanted to put a female team on it for a female perspective. So it is a feminist piece, really, but also it's an immersive show that should be a lot of fun, and it's also an important show, I think. Yeah. To also, the Palace want to show parallels to these 2 women, to struggles with society today, and I think that's another really exciting angle for us as a company.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to see it. It starts in February?
Yes, February the 28th opens until the end of March, so it's only on for 5 weeks.
Quite a small window.
Yes,
so I'll put a link on that one as well.
Yeah.
So you can get a ticket there. And finally, I just want to ask, why do you think there has been such an explosion in this type of
Very good question, isn't it? Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's not just, it's come from everything. It's not just theatre. I think this happened in society, really. And I say that because the audience are in control now. You know, we are much more, we're not passive, we're forward thinking. We are in control. Now that's happened with music, you know, you no longer, you know, buy a CD, you know, you've got access to Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever. You are in control, you choose bits of music. It's happened in TV, you know, when I grew up there was just 5 channels. Now I don't watch TV. Yeah. I am in control of TV, you know, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV. You are the person in control. You're the person who's deciding what to watch. Yeah. I know there's arguments to say, well, actually, you know, you can sit there and be passive, but then that's happened. I'm just saying in TV and music, also film. You know, you've got obviously 3D, 4D films and VR and AR, all these things, and then you add to it social media, which is a massive thing. You look at Facebook, Instagram, and all those things where people want to be the hero in their own adventure now. People want to be the protagonist. They don't want to be the passive watcher. People want to say, look at me, I'm in India. Look at me, I'm doing this. Look at the food I'm eating. Look at me, I'm doing this and you're not. That kind of plays into a little bit, but also it plays into events of they're the protagonist. People want to be in the experience. People want to do it. And I think that's happened globally with all kinds of genres, and I think the theatre industry, I think why immersive is happening is because people want to do that, experiences. People want to have these experiences now, and all those things I think feed into it, and theatre and experiences feed into it as well.
It's interesting you just said that with social media about the type of content that people put out. Essentially, it's a type of branding of oneself. Yeah, and that is very similar to what you were saying about each audience member having to have a clear role. So yes. Maybe there's a tie-in. There is somewhere there.
There is, and I think, you know, when we started thinking about it in 2014, it wasn't really what it is now, but definitely audiences want to be experiencing, you know, want to be at the forefront rather than passive now. And I'm doing this or I've gone to this. Secret Cinema played into that a little bit as well, with like even the title Secret, you know, their tagline is tell no one. Yeah. People love that stuff of like, you know, of like, oh, I'm doing this and you're not, and I've seen this and you haven't, and I'm not telling you what it is. So that plays into it, but it is interesting. I think that the word immersive is such a big word, and it's encompasses a lot of things, but you know, the theatre industry are picking up on it as well, and even you look at things like shows at the Bridge, which is a new venue, relatively new venue.
Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah, and Julius Caesar, they started calling that show an immersive show, an immersive experience, you know, there are many arguments about that. Is it immersive or is it promenade? But it shows to me the influence of that word. But I think why that's grown is because of everything. People want these experiences. But what I think is exciting for us as theatre makers, because Alice was so excited with the diversity of audiences that came to see Alice. We had so many non-theatre going audiences, and that's the positive of it, is that sometimes people can look at theatre and think it's quite elite and it attracts a certain amount of people, but actually immersive theatre, immersive experiences is a lot more open, what more commercial, if you just say the word, more, you know, people can go to that not thinking it's a theatre show.
Yeah.
They go to it as an experience.
Yeah.
There are lots of people who will go and think, oh, it's a night out, exciting night out.
Yeah.
For us, it's a theatre show, but that's fine that we're attracting people into theatre, and that's our job, I think, as theatre makers, to get new audiences. And that is what the exciting thing about immersive theatre, this new audience.
It's redefining what people think theatre is.
Yeah.
When you attract new audiences like that who maybe thought they weren't the traditional theatre goer,
yeah,
saying, oh, actually, I love theatre.
I love it, yeah. So it's interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for telling us all about the company and giving us all that information. And I hope that has been interesting for you guys, and make sure to check out the links below even, of the two shows, the LET Awards night show and
United Queendom.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.